back to Story Time with Miss Carol. Today's book is called Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn. Well, you know, autumn is another name for fall, and that's the season that we're in right now. And I wonder what you did this weekend. I know a lot of families are going up to the mountains to go to the apple orchards, and some people are going to farms to pick out their own pumpkins, or maybe you went to the store to buy a pumpkin. A lot of people are watching football. All of those things are fall or autumn things. So that's our theme for this book. It's called Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn. It's by Kimberly and James Dean. I hope you enjoy it. Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn. It's Pete on a hayride. It's the first day of fall, and Pete the Cat is feeling blue. I like summer better, he says. In summer, I can swim and surf and play at the beach. Maybe you just need to remind yourself of all the things you love about autumn, Mom suggests. I'll try, Pete says. Pete finds Grandma in the kitchen. She's baking delicious pumpkin pies. The whole house smells sweet and spicy. Pete loves helping Grandma bake a pumpkin pie, but he loves to eat it even more. After the baking is done, Pete picks up a squat orange pumpkin from the counter and slips it into his backpack as a souvenir. Next, Pete heads to the town corn maze. Pete and his friends wander through the long, twisty paths made of tall corn stalks. The best part of the corn maze is getting lost and having to start over again. As he leaves, Pete plucks a golden corn cob from the maze and places it in his backpack. Then Pete visits his grandpa, who is knitting on the porch. Grandpa helps Pete use the knitting needles to knit the yarn into cool patterns. Together, Pete and Grandpa make a long, cozy scarf for Pete to wear. When they're done, Pete chooses a little ball of leftover yarn and places it in his backpack. Next, Pete goes to the hayride at the park. Pete, Bob, Mom, Dad, and Grandpa all pile into a wagon filled with hay. They go on a bumpy wagon ride around the park. Woohoo! Pete shouts. At the end of the ride, Pete grabs a handful of sweet-smelling hay from the wagon and stuffs it into his backpack. Pete heads over to the apple orchard, where he and Callie go apple picking. They eat sweet apple donuts and drink hot apple cider and fill their buckets with apples of all different shapes and sizes. Before he leaves, Pete chooses a round red apple and drops it into his backpack. Next, Pete stops by the park. He plays touch football with Bob and their friends. Pete scores a touchdown and everyone cheers. After the game, Pete grabs Bob's football and stuffs it into his backpack. It barely fits. Bob won't mind if I borrow this, Pete says. Finally, Pete heads back home, but he stops in his front yard, which is covered with bright leaves falling from the trees. Pete helps his dad to rake the leaves into a big, colorful mound. Then Pete runs and jumps into all the leaf piles. After he's done jumping, Pete picks up a bunch of red and gold and orange leaves and stuffs them into his backpack. Pete's backpack is bursting with fall souvenirs. He can't wait to show Mom. "I love autumn," Pete says. "Wonderful," says Mom. "You know, these things would make great decorations for Thanksgiving." So Pete helps Mom fill a basket with all his mementos. They place the basket in the center of the table. "You did a great job, Pete," says Mom. "It's beautiful," says Dad. "Is that my football?" says Bob. Just then, the doorbell rings. The Thanksgiving guests are here. All of Pete's family and friends gather around the dining room table. They tell stories and laugh at jokes while they eat. Everyone is having a great time. Pete looks around the table and smiles. He loves lots of things about autumn, but Pete knows what he loves most all year long. His family and friends. Such a great book, a good reminder of all the wonderful things that you can do and see in the fall. I'm wearing my favorite fall pants. They've got leaves all over them of different colors. And I've enjoyed watching the weather change to be cooler. The leaves haven't quite changed yet, but they will soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed this book, learning about all the things that are autumn or fall. And I will see you next time on Story Time with Miss Carol. Bye.